Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books, and this is the 14th roundup of things I have been reading towards the Read What You Own challenge. This challenge is to read 100 books from my shelves before I buy another one. If this challenge was a movie, this week would have been the montage section where I knuckled down, applied myself, and really got going. After a few weeks of dwindling numbers of books read, I was getting into a bit of a morass halfway through the challenge roughly, and reading some longer books, taking some time over them and not getting as much read in a week as I would like to. However, I now have a deadline, so I need to up my game. Time to get the thinner books out of the bookcase. I'd already planned to with my thin fantasy, and hopefully I'm beginning to deliver on that. So this last week I've gone through quite a few. At the end of last week I had finished or was just about to finish Moonflash. I have now read the sequel to that, The Moon and the Face. Now I can't talk too much about the sequel without ruining the first book. I'm very conscious of this, having just recorded the spoiler book tag for release later this week. Spoiler. I'm doing the spoiler book tag. I think I'll content myself with saying that The Moon and the Face both takes a story into a new direction and returns a story to the source of the first book. I would recommend these two books. Like I said, I didn't feel when I finished the first that it needed a sequel, but I think the sequel is pretty good itself, although you do have to have read the first one. I then read something which didn't take me long at all. Jayne Mansfield for President. I'll be talking about this later in the month when I do a video on Filmtastic February. I have to say it confused me as to how this book originated. Someone sat down and had this idea and presumably got Jayne Mansfield to be okay with it. I went straight from that book back to the comforting arms of fantasy and Thomas Burnett Swan's The Weirwoods, with a very colourful cover which has grown on me during the week. This is from Ace Science Fiction. I think it's 1960 something or other, 1967, and was based on stories from science fantasy published in 1965. The story is based in an alternate Etruscan past, so it has elements of the pre-Roman Empire civilization of the Etruscans, but adds in centaurs, sprites, fauns, and other mythical creatures as an accepted part of society, or not quite accepted, but yes, you do need some conflict in these books. It is an odd book which portrays both the human race and the mythical races as sort of quite needlessly cruel, but also focuses on characters who can transcend that and make the bridge across the worlds between what we call mythical now and what we call historical. This is the first Thomas Burnett Swan I've read, and should I see any more, I think I'll be picking it up. I did quite enjoy it. Next up, there was more mid-60s ace science fantasy. This very much in the sword and sorcery vein. 2 books from Lynn Carter, The Wizard of the Moria and Thongor of the Moria. These are very derivative, but nonetheless enjoyable for that. This is a mix of John Carter of Mars, Tarzan, Conan, you name it. You have adventure, betrayal, princesses, friendships made, dastardly villains. They are very episodic. They are very picaresque. There are some truly atrocious sentences. There is a lot of exposition, a lot of background explained very quickly as to why a particular character is in a particular dungeon or peril. But I think without the miniature info dumps that punctuate the book, you wouldn't get the pace. And it is the pace absolutely that carries these books, and a couple of central characters who you do grow to like. Thongor, the character, is just a lot of fun. He is very derivative of a certain other barbarian, but his ability to eat or sleep even when faced with the most direst of perils is quite funny. There is ridiculous leaps made in these books. There are stupid, unbelievable coincidences. It is all good fun. So yes, those 2 books read. The books I've mentioned so far have all counted towards fantasy in February, except for the Jane Mansfield. That's fantastic February. February is also the last month for the winter of Wyndham, so I continued with some Wyndham. I think I had read this before. I was really wondering whether I had read this or simply seen the TV show from the 1980s. But Chucky from John Wyndham. This was a surprise to me. I shouldn't be surprised because I love John Wyndham. But I think having read it as a child, having seen the TV series, vaguely remember it as a child, I just figured it was a kid's book. And it's not. I mean, the language is simple, readable, brisk, as is Wyndham's style. But the way I felt reading this book now is very different from when I read it as a child. I think the best way I can explain this is if you listen to She's Leaving Home by the Beatles. As a kid, you are siding with the kid. If you listen to She's Leaving Home as an adult, as a parent, you have a very different interpretation of the song. And that's what it is like with this book. As a child, I was reading this thinking, you have an alien friend. Reading this as an adult, I'm thinking this is a parent in despair at how to keep their child safe. Anyway, it's brilliant, as I suspected it would be, and a hearty recommendation. I've now got to find out what Wyndham I have left to read for next year's event. Got Jizzle, and I'm sure I've got something else, but I think I have now read all of the established classics. At the same time that I was reading those couple of books, I was also dipping into and slowly getting through a pulp magazine, Love Story magazine. volume 121, issue number 5, I think. I'm not talking about it here. I have a whole video on that coming up later this week as a pulp magazine. This did not count towards the 100 book challenge. However, the next 2 books did count towards the 100, however brief they may seem. Britain Needs Books by John Brophy. So this is written in 1942, published by the National Book Council, and this was gifted or bought by Bridget Moss in January of 1943. So this is a wartime book, and it is a plea to continue to produce books during wartime. I have to say, reading some of the passages of this book had some uncomfortable echoes of our present experiences. And a little more wartime reading, another book from the Second World War, Guild Books, which was a conglomeration of a few book companies who clubbed together for the duration of the war to continue to produce literature. This is How Sleep the Brave from Flying Officer X. Flying Officer X was the pseudonym of H.E. Bates, he of the Darling Buds of May fame. And if you're expecting something twee, like the Darling Buds of May, or if you're expecting something jingoistic, you're going to be disappointed. It's patriotic, certainly, but thoughtfully so. I have also started last night, so we'll hopefully finish today, The Body in the Library from Agatha Christie. So, continuing my read-through of Miss Marple. So a collection of slender works, but a healthy stack of titles to add to the sheet. It now stands at 59, but I am going to have to try to keep this pace up if I'm to stand a chance of getting to 100 by the end of the first week of April. As a result, I'm keeping this video short because I need to do some more reading. Until next time.